His hands were pressed against the hot metal of his truck, the officer's smug voice echoing in the haze. In 5 minutes, her world would shatter when a military major saluted him, the man she was about to arrest. The oppressive July heat radiated from the asphalt of Main Street, creating a shimmering veil over the sleepy town of Oak Ridge. For Sergeant Elias Vance, the heat was just another sensation to be filed away, acknowledged but not engaged with. His mind was still a fortress of precision and discipline, a state required by the 21 steps he had just walked, over and over, at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Now, driving his battered but reliable 2011 Ford F-150, the biggest battle was decompressing from that state of absolute perfection. He was no longer Sergeant Vance of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, guardian of the nation's most sacred shrine. He was just Elias, a man in a faded black t-shirt and worn jeans, trying to melt back into the civilian world. The transition was always jarring. At the tomb, every crease in his uniform, every click of his heels, every second of his watch was measured against an unforgiving standard of flawlessness. Here, in the slow, humid afternoon of his hometown, the world was messy, unpredictable, and loud. The air, thick with the smell of sun-baked dust and a distant barbecue, carried the shrieks of children running through sprinklers. It was a world he protected but felt increasingly separate from. His hands, steady on the worn leather of the steering wheel, still felt the phantom weight of his M14 rifle. He flexed his fingers, a small, unconscious ritual to release the tension. A glance at the dashboard clock read 4:45 p.m. Home was just a few miles away, a quiet house, a cold drink, and the silence he craved. As he slowed for a red light near the Junction Diner, a local institution famous for its strong coffee and even stronger opinions, the world behind him exploded in a strobing torrent of red and blue. The lights filled his rearview mirror, painting his stoic face in frantic flashes. A brand new patrol car had pulled up tight behind him. Elias's jaw tightened, not from fear, but from a weary sense of inevitability. He felt no spike of adrenaline, no surge of panic. Instead, his training kicked in, a calm, cold wave of procedure. He signaled, pulled his F-150 smoothly to the gravel shoulder, and killed the engine. The crunch of the tires was the only sound that broke the sudden quiet in his cab. The driver's side door of the cruiser swung open and Officer Kayla Dawson emerged. She was young, maybe late 20s, with her blonde hair pulled back into a severe, tight ponytail that seemed to accentuate the sharpness of her features. Her mirrored sunglasses were an impenetrable shield, reflecting the hazy, golden light of the setting sun. She moved with a clipped, aggressive energy, her boots clicking on the pavement with an authority that felt more performed than earned. A step behind her was her partner, Officer Ben Rodriguez. He was older, with a softer build and a face that seemed permanently etched with a look of mild apology. His hand rested near his belt, a gesture that looked more tired than threatening. Officer Dawson leaned toward Elias's open window, her voice a sharp counterpoint to the lazy afternoon buzz. "Evening, sir. You seem to be in a real hurry back there." Elias met her unseen eyes in the reflection of her glasses. His voice was calm, even, and devoid of any emotion she could latch onto. "I was adhering to the speed limit, officer." "Is that so?" "License and registration, please." He reached for his wallet, his movements deliberate and economical. He retrieved his license and the truck's registration from the glove compartment. Tucked deep inside his wallet, unseen, was a small, silver badge, the Tomb Guard identification badge. It was more than metal, it was a symbol of a sacred vow, an emblem of a life dedicated to honoring the nameless. He handed the documents over. Dawson snatched them from his hand, her eyes flicking down to the license. "Elias Vance, huh?" She looked from the photo back to him, then let her gaze sweep over the F-150 with theatrical disdain. The truck had its share of dings and a patina of rust on the rear fender, scars from a life of honest work, not neglect. "This machine has definitely seen better days. You sure it's even safe for the road?" Elias's lips pressed into a thin, hard line, but he refused the bait. It's maintained, officer. It passes inspection. Aha, she grunted, unconvinced. Step out of the vehicle for me, please. We need to get a better look at this situation. Officer Rodriguez shifted his weight, speaking up for the first time. His voice was a low murmur. Just a routine check, man. It won't take long. Elias unbuckled his seatbelt, the click echoing in the tense silence. He swung his door open and stepped out. His boots hit the ground with a quiet, solid thud. He stood tall, his posture ramrod straight, a stark contrast to the casual slouch of most civilians. It was a stance drilled into him by thousands of hours of marching, a posture of unwavering dignity. He was just a man in a t-shirt, but he stood like a monument. And Officer Dawson already hated him for it. Officer Dawson began a slow, deliberate circle of the F-150, her eyes scanning for any pretext, any minor infraction she could seize upon. Her partner, Rodriguez, lingered near Elias, casting uneasy glances at the small crowd beginning to form across the street in front of the Junction Diner. A few locals, drawn by the spectacle of flashing lights on a quiet afternoon, had paused. Phones were starting to emerge, their dark screens angled to capture the unfolding drama. Dawson stopped at the tailgate, tapping a rust spot with a long, manicured nail. The sound was a sharp, metallic tink, tink. This right here, she announced, her voice carrying across the street, this is a public hazard. A piece of this could fly off and hit someone's windshield. She turned her head, her mirrored glasses fixing on Elias. What do you do for a living, Mr. Vance? Driving around in this old heap doesn't exactly scream, stable employment. The insult was designed to provoke, to strip him of his composure. Elias's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, but his voice remained a flat, steady line. I serve in the United States Army, officer. Stationed at Fort Myer. A smirk played on Dawson's lips. She strolled back toward him, handing him back his license as if it were a soiled tissue. The Army, huh? Doing what, pushing paper? You don't exactly look like you're fresh off the battlefield. I'm off duty, Elias said simply, his hands clasped loosely in front of him, a parade rest posture that was second nature. Rodriguez saw the dangerous turn the interaction was taking. He stepped forward slightly. Kayla, come on. His papers are clean. Let's just write a warning for the rust and let him go. Dawson ignored him completely, her focus locked on Elias. She invaded his personal space, stepping closer until he could see the faint outline of her eyes behind the sunglasses. You were weaving a little back there, Vance. Have you been drinking? Or are you just one of those guys who can't focus? The accusation hung in the thick, humid air. Elias's jaw was a block of granite. I have not been drinking, officer. I was driving in a straight line. If you have a citation for me, please write it. If not, I need to get home. His calm defiance was a spark on a short fuse. Dawson's face flushed with anger. Don't you get smart with me, she snapped. That's it. Place your hands on the truck. We're doing a pat-down for officer safety. Elias's gaze flicked to the crowd, which had now swelled to about a dozen people. He could hear their murmurs, a mix of judgment and sympathy. Looks like he's asking for it, talking back like that, a man in a greasy baseball cap muttered to his friend. A young woman filming with her phone shook her head. This is insane. They pulled him over for nothing. Taking a slow, deep breath, Elias turned and placed his hands flat on the hot, dusty hood of his F-150. He stared at his own reflection in the windshield, his face an impassive mask. Internally, he began to recite a line from the Tomb Guard's creed, a mental anchor in a sea of indignity, my standard will remain perfection. Dawson's pat-down was rough, unprofessional. Her hands paused when she felt the hard rectangle of his wallet in his back pocket. She pulled it out, flipping it open. And then she saw it. The small, silver badge, intricately detailed with a wreath, an inverted rifle, and the words, "Tomb of the Unknown Soldier." "What's this?" she asked, her voice dripping with skepticism. She held it up between her thumb and forefinger, letting it glint in the sun. "Some kind of souvenir. You buy this at a gift shop?" Elias's voice was low, but it held the resonance of a funeral drum. "It is not a souvenir. It is my badge." Dawson let out a short, derisive snort. "Yeah, right." She tossed the wallet onto the hood next to his hands. "Stay put. We're running your information." She swaggered back to the cruiser, leaving Rodriguez to stand guard. Across the street, inside the diner, Brenda May, the 60-something owner with a cloud of silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, had been watching the entire exchange. She had seen Elias come in for coffee after his shifts for years. She recognized the quiet dignity in his posture, the profound sadness in his eyes that he tried to hide. And she had seen his badge once, when he dropped his wallet. She knew what it meant. Her heart sank as she saw Dawson's aggressive stance and the growing, gossiping crowd. "That ain't right," she muttered, her hands clenching into fists on her white apron. This wasn't just a traffic stop, it was a public shaming. Without a second thought, she turned from the window, grabbed the diner's old landline phone, and dialed a number she had committed to memory for just such an emergency, the main line for Fort Myer. Her voice was urgent, hushed but firm. "This is Brenda May at the Junction Diner in Oak Ridge. I need to speak to the duty officer immediately. One of your tomb guards is being harassed by the local police right outside my window. His name is Elias Vance. You need to send someone. Now." Back on the sun-scorched roadside, Officer Dawson returned from the cruiser, her stride even more confident, her expression harder than before. The clean record had clearly not placated her, it had only fueled her frustration. "All right, Mr. Vance," she said, drawing out his name with sarcastic emphasis. "Your record is clean. But I'm still not convinced you're fit to be behind the wheel of this thing. Your attitude stinks, and I don't like it. So here's what's going to happen. You're coming with us down to the station for a full sobriety test." The ultimatum was a clear abuse of power, and everyone present knew it. A wave of murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Officer Rodriguez finally put his foot down, stepping between his partner and Elias. "Kayla, this is ridiculous and you know it. We have no probable cause to take him in. We're going to have a major complaint on our hands. He's being uncooperative and belligerent." Dawson shot back, her voice rising. She shoved past him, her anger now fully consuming her judgment. "That's enough for me. You're either with me on this, Ben, or you're obstructing." Rodriguez fell silent, his face a mask of conflicted resignation. He had done what he could. Elias's voice, when he spoke, cut through the tension with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "On what grounds, officer? I have broken no laws. I have complied with every single request. I will not be going to the station." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The quiet finality in his tone was more powerful than any shout. Dawson's face turned a shade of crimson. This quiet man, this driver of a junk heap truck, was defying her. In public. In front of a crowd with a dozen cameras pointed at her. She saw her authority, the very thing she was trying so desperately to project, crumbling before her eyes. "That's it," she hissed, her hand dropping to her holster and unsnapping the retention strap. "You're under arrest for obstructing an officer of the law. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. Now." She reached for her handcuffs, the metal links glinting menacingly in the sun. The crowd gasped. Elias stood his ground, his body tensing, not for a fight, but in the way a man braces for an impact he knows he cannot avoid. He was a soldier. He would not resist arrest, however unjust. He would follow the protocol and let the system correct itself later. It was a lonely, bitter pill to swallow. But before Dawson's fingers could close around the cold steel of the cuffs, a new sound intruded. It started as a low, deep rumble, a vibration felt more in the chest than heard with the ears. It was a sound utterly alien to the tranquil backdrop of Oak Ridge. The townsfolk frowned, looking down the long, straight road that led out of town. The rumbling grew, resolving itself into the distinct, throaty roar of heavy-duty engines. 2 military Humvees, painted in drab olive green, rounded the corner at a speed that was both controlled and intimidating. They didn't slow down. They powered forward, their massive tires kicking up clouds of gravel and dust as they pulled into a perfect, synchronized formation, boxing in the police cruiser. The sight was so sudden, so overwhelming, that it sucked the air out of the scene. The doors of the Humvees flew open in unison. 8 soldiers emerged, their movements economical and precise. They were clad in crisp combat uniforms, their bearing exuding a level of discipline that made the local police look like amateurs. They fanned out, creating a silent, unbreachable perimeter. From the lead vehicle stepped an officer. She was a woman in her 40s, her dark hair pinned in a tight, regulation bun beneath her patrol cap. On her collar, the silver oak leaf of a major glinted. She moved with an unshakable purpose, her eyes, sharp and intelligent, sweeping the scene and assessing it in a single, cold glance. She ignored Officer Dawson completely. She ignored the crowd. Her entire focus was on the man in the faded t-shirt standing with his hands on the hood of his truck. She strode forward, her polished boots crunching on the gravel, stopping exactly 3 feet from Elias. Her back was ramrod straight. She raised her hand to her brow in a salute so crisp it seemed to slice the air. Her voice was clear, powerful, and echoed in the stunned silence. "Sergeant Vance," she declared. "Major Catherine Rivas. We were informed of a potential situation. Are you in need of assistance?" The world seemed to grind to a halt. The lazy buzz of insects, the distant traffic, the nervous whispers from the crowd, it all vanished, replaced by a silence so profound it was almost deafening. Elias lifted his head. He pushed himself off the hood of his truck, turned to face the major, and returned the salute with the same flawless precision. His expression, for the first time, softened from a mask of endurance into one of professional recognition. "I am all right, Major. Thank you. Just a misunderstanding." Officer Dawson's mouth fell open. The mirrored sunglasses, which had served as her shield of anonymity and power, slipped down the bridge of her nose, revealing eyes wide with utter, uncomprehending shock. Her partner, Rodriguez, took a half-step back, his hands raised slightly in a universal gesture of, "This has nothing to do with me." The crowd was frozen, their phones still recording, but the nature of what they were recording had fundamentally changed. This was no longer a video of a small-town cop hassling a local, it was something else entirely. Major Rivas let her salute drop, then turned her steely gaze upon Dawson. Her voice was ice. "Who is the officer in charge here?" Dawson swallowed hard, fumbling to push her sunglasses back up. She struggled to reclaim the composure that had evaporated in an instant. I am Officer Kayla Dawson, Oak Ridge PD. She gestured vaguely at Elias. "We stopped this individual for a routine traffic violation. He became uncooperative." The major's eyes narrowed into slits. "This individual," she began, her voice dangerously low, "is Sergeant Elias Vance, a sentinel at the tomb of the unknown soldier, a member of the 3rd United States Infantry Regiment. He is one of the most rigorously tested, psychologically stable, and disciplined soldiers in the entire United States Army. His entire existence is defined by cooperation and compliance with protocol. So I will ask you again, Officer Dawson, what exactly happened here?" Dawson's face, already flushed from the heat and her anger, now turned deathly pale. "A tomb guard? I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't ask," Major Rivas countered, taking a step forward. "You saw a man in an old truck and you made an assumption. You judged him." She pointed a finger not at Dawson, but at the wallet still sitting on the truck's hood. You saw his badge and you dismissed it. She walked over, picked up the wallet, and carefully removed the Tomb Guard identification badge. She held it up for Dawson to see, the silver catching the afternoon light. Do you have any idea what it takes to earn this? The Major's voice resonated with a cold fury that commanded the attention of everyone present. It takes a 9-month trial period so brutal that nearly 90% of candidates fail. It requires memorizing every detail of Arlington National Cemetery, including the locations of hundreds of graves. It requires a soldier to live a life so beyond reproach, both on and off duty, that they are deemed worthy of this honor. Sergeant Vance has sworn an oath to guard the honored dead of this nation. An oath to represent the absolute best of the United States Army. And you, officer, in your profound ignorance, chose to disrespect him in that sacred duty. Rodriguez stepped forward, his voice shaky. Ma'am, with all due respect, we were just doing our job. We meant no disrespect. Major Rivas's gaze softened for a fraction of a second as it fell on him, but her tone remained firm. Your job is to protect and to serve, officer. Not to escalate a traffic stop into a public humiliation based on prejudice. Your partner failed in that duty today. The mood of the crowd had completed its 180-degree turn. The man in the greasy baseball cap now looked ashamed. The young woman with the phone whispered reverently to her friend, "Oh my God, he's a Tomb Guard. Like, the guys who walk in the hurricane." The old man from the diner, who had been shaking his head earlier, now nodded with gruff approval. Should have known, he said to no one in particular. He's got that look about him. The real deal. Finally, Elias spoke, his voice calm and steady, acting as a balm on the raw nerves of the situation. Major, I appreciate the support. But I don't want any more trouble. I just want to go home. Major Rivas nodded, her expression softening as she looked at him. Understood, Sergeant. But this cannot be left unaddressed. She turned back to a mortified Officer Dawson. You owe this soldier an apology. Every eye was on Officer Dawson. The sun beat down, the silence stretched, and her humiliation was now as public as her earlier aggression had been. Her pride was at war with the undeniable, crushing weight of her mistake. Taking a shaky breath, she finally removed her sunglasses completely, revealing eyes filled with a mixture of fear and embarrassment. She met Elias's steady gaze. Sergeant Vance, she began, her voice barely a whisper. I apologize. I made a mistake. I made assumptions, and I was unprofessional. I am sorry. Elias gave a single, curt nod. His expression was not one of triumph, but of weary resolution. Apology accepted, officer. A word of advice, next time, ask more questions. Judge less. You never know who you're talking to. Rodriguez, looking profoundly relieved that the confrontation was over, ran a hand over the back of his neck. Man, I've seen the videos of you guys changing the guard. It's unreal. Seriously, I'm sorry too. Just then, Brenda May stepped out from the diner, wiping her hands on her apron. Her voice, warm and commanding, cut through the remaining tension. All right, folks, show's over. Let these people sort themselves out. Anyone who's thirsty, first cup of coffee is on the house. The crowd, sensing the climax had passed, began to disperse, their murmurs and phone screens now carrying a story of respect rather than conflict. The soldiers, on a silent command from Major Rivas, began to file back into their Humvees with the same discipline they had shown upon arrival. Sergeant, do you require an escort back to your residence? Major Rivas asked. Elias shook his head. I'm good, Major. Thank you for coming. We always have your back, Sergeant, she said, a rare warmth in her eyes. Always. As the Humvees rumbled away, Elias expected to get in his truck and finally head home. But Brenda May was already walking across the street toward him. Don't you even think about it, Elias Vance. And you too, she said, pointing a firm finger at Dawson and Rodriguez, are coming inside for coffee. You're going to talk this out properly. An hour later, the four of them sat in a corner booth at the Junction Diner. The scent of stale coffee and fried bacon hung in the air. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sterile glow on the table. Elias nursed a black coffee. Across from him, Dawson and Rodriguez looked deeply uncomfortable, their badges glinting under the lights. Brenda May poured them each a cup, her presence acting as a buffer. So, she said, we all sorted out yet? Dawson stirred her coffee, her eyes fixed on the swirling liquid. She looked up at Elias, her voice earnest and stripped of its earlier bravado. Sergeant, can I ask you something for real? Why didn't you just tell us? Why not just say, I'm a tomb guard, you're making a mistake? Elias set his cup down, his gaze becoming distant, as if looking through the diner walls toward the green hills of Arlington. Because my badge is supposed to speak for itself. My actions are supposed to speak for themselves. He leaned forward slightly. We're taught that the tomb is the mission. We are nothing. We are nameless representatives of all American service members. The moment I use my position to get out of a traffic ticket, the moment I say, do you know who I am, that honor is tarnished. It becomes about me, Elias Vance. And it's never, ever supposed to be about me. It's about them. The unknowns. The ones who gave everything and got no recognition in return. My duty is to be perfect for them. Explaining or defending that perfection feels like a failure. Rodriguez nodded slowly, his eyes wide. That's intense. I never thought of it like that. Dawson looked down at her hands. I became a cop because I wanted to make a difference. To protect people. But today, I didn't do that. I saw your old truck, your plain clothes, and your quietness, and I decided you were a problem I needed to solve. I judged you before I even knew you. Brenda chimed in, leaning on the counter. That's Elias for you. Been coming in here for years. Never says a word about what he does. The quietest, most respectful man I know. I only knew he was a sentinel because I saw that badge of his one day when he dropped his wallet. Never bragged. Not once. A faint, sad smile touched Emily's lips. I'm going to do better, she said, looking Elias in the eye. I have to. Elias met her gaze, and for the first time, a hint of warmth entered his own. That's all any of us can do, officer. Keep learning. Keep trying to be better than we were yesterday. The incident at Oak Ridge did not fade with the setting sun. The following day, Major Rivas sat across from the town's chief of police, a grizzled, 20-year veteran named Bill Brody. They were in his small, wood-paneled office, the sounds of the station buzzing outside. Chief Brody, Major Rivas began, her tone firm but fair, what happened to Sergeant Vance yesterday was a systemic failure. It wasn't just one officer having a bad day. It was a failure of training, perspective, and respect. Brody nodded, his face serious. He had already reviewed Rodriguez's report and seen a few of the videos that were now circulating on local social media. I've spoken at length with officers Dawson and Rodriguez. They know the magnitude of their error, particularly Dawson. She's on administrative duty pending a full review. What do you propose? A bridge, Rivas said simply. Not a punishment. We need your officers to understand who they are policing. Many of my soldiers live in your town. I'm proposing a mandatory training and orientation program. Your officers come to Fort Myer. They'll attend a brief at the Old Guard headquarters. They will visit the tomb of the unknown soldier, not as tourists, but as professionals. We want them to understand what that uniform, what that service, truly means. This isn't about military versus police. It's about mutual respect. Chief Brody looked at her for a long moment, then extended his hand across the desk. It's a deal, Major. Consider it done. A week later, in a packed briefing room at the Oak Ridge Police Department, Chief Brody addressed his officers. Dawson and Rodriguez stood near the front. Starting today, Brody announced, we are implementing a new protocol in partnership with Fort Myer. Every officer, starting with Officer Dawson, will attend a community and service orientation on base. You will learn about the men and women who serve alongside us in this community. You will learn that respect is not earned by the car someone drives or the clothes they wear. It is inherent. And you will remember that every single person you stop has a story. He paused, then nodded toward Dawson. Officer Dawson has requested to say a few words. Kayla stepped forward, her voice steady and clear, devoid of the defensive edge it once had. Last week, I made a profound mistake, she began, her eyes sweeping across the faces of her colleagues. I failed to see the person in front of me. I saw a stereotype. I disrespected a man who embodies the very best of this country, a tomb guard. I learned that day that our authority doesn't just come from our badge, but from the trust we build. And I broke that trust. Every stop we make, every interaction, is a chance to build it or break it. I won't forget that again. The room was quiet, then a few officers began to clap softly, a ripple of support. Months passed. The training program was in full swing. One Saturday afternoon, Officer Dawson, off-duty and in civilian clothes, drove her own car down a quiet suburban street. She pulled up to a small, neat house with a perfectly trimmed lawn. The old Ford F-150 was parked in the driveway. Elias was outside, methodically washing his truck, a simple rag in hand. She got out of her car. Sergeant Vance, she called out tentatively. He looked up, wiping his hands on a towel. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, followed by a calm neutrality. Officer Dawson. What can I do for you? She smiled, a little nervous. I was wondering if I could buy you that coffee, I interrupted. And my name is Kayla. Elias chuckled, a low, pleasant sound. He gestured with his head toward the house. I just made a fresh pot. Come on in. They sat at his simple wooden kitchen table, 2 mugs of coffee between them. On the wall was a single, framed photograph, Elias, in his immaculate tomb guard dress uniform, standing sentinel before the tomb. I get it now, Kayla said softly, glancing at the photo and then back at him. Or at least, I'm starting to. What you do, it's a kind of walking prayer, isn't it? Elias looked into his coffee cup, a rare, warm smile touching his lips. That's a good way to put it. He met her eyes. That's a very good start. As the sun sets over Arlington National Cemetery, the solitary, perfect figure of Sergeant Elias Vance continues his silent patrol. His 21 steps echo in the quiet air, a timeless rhythm of honor and remembrance. In a world so quick to judge, so eager to shout, his quiet strength reminds us that true honor isn't found in a uniform or a badge. It's found in how we choose to see each other. Every person carries a story, a duty, a silent vow. All we have to do is listen. What did this story make you think about? Do you believe respect should be automatic, or does it need to be earned? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Please, let's discuss this with consideration for everyone's perspective, and remember to comment with respect. And if you believe that stories of honor, duty, and sacrifice still matter, hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe for more.